I want to talk now about the king safety and how does it, matter? How does it count in the different positions we play? So we'll start with the idea on how does king safety relate to the opening stage. Now, when it comes down to king safety in the opening, the king is extremely vulnerable. Now, you probably know that, but why and what are the ways to act towards that idea is usually what's most important in those cases. So we're going to play an interesting example in which basically black is left behind with his king, and essentially that's something that white is able to exploit. Now we have the so-called king's gambit right here. When black exchanges, then there is knight f3 and black plays g5. Now going on this way, his intention is quite clear, and it is all about just getting to, well, protect the pawn, possibly ready to challenge the knight and do some other things that make sense. Then white plays, of course, bishop to the c4 as a candidate, which makes sense, and then black is able to do g4 in order to drive the knight out of its current square. Now when that happens, instead of just retreating, white's intention is to actually castle short and let the knight go. This is not because he wants to make a gift to black, but rather because he is letting black to take that knight, yet the main goal is that as the knight falls, the biggest of all ideas will be that white is going to get ready to make more threats, to create better challenges. For example, after g takes f, the move of queen takes f3 sets white up in a position to ultimately attack. Now, attacking may seem difficult, but there is one particular idea that's beyond all others, and that's the one thing that white would try to utilize in order to grow his attack and make his strength. The thing that he wants to rely on is the fact that black's king is in the middle. Having the black king in the middle of the board is the perfect resource that white could use to support and back up his plan. It's not going to be very easy to do that, but this is a good start. So white is actually going to use it. With the move of queen to f3 as it goes now, black has different ways to play. One of his most common ways is queen f6. When white plays e5, black's able to play queen takes d5. And now, since we're not really discussing the opening, we just want to talk about the king's safety. The sacrifice out there is extremely critical. It's not just a sacrifice that we can see in everyday game. It's a sacrifice that completely deteriorates the black's king's position and most of all his prospects. Without the king being in a safe position, he's having some incredible issues with it. So what do we do when we see a king as exposed and vulnerable like this one? Well, the first thing that you need to do is you need to start attacking it. There are different ways on how you can attack against it, but one of the most common ways is if you can create forcing moves, checks, captures, direct threats, any sorts of moves that will help you to push the opponent back and essentially make more problems. A move like d4 fits really well within that plan. The moment white's pawns goes on the d4 square, black has a little bit of a problem right now. He's got to worry about the queen. He's being pushed back or forth. It doesn't really matter. But the idea is that he would have to lose the strength and command that he's supposed to have. Here's a good example. If black takes with the queen on d4, white's plan is just to play with bishop e3 and attack. This move is awesome because while the black king is on f7, black cannot capture there. He cannot capture the e3 because he'd lose it. This is a great way to get things started. Right now, as of right now, we see a lot of pain, a lot of damage in black's position that is going to happen due to his badly placed king. When the queen comes down to f6, as he will most likely do, we have the move of bishop takes f4, and now you can realize why this is such an excellent position. Having that rook from the f line available, the black king exposed on f7, and even the queen being on f6, just not standing so great. All these things provide us with the ability to set an attack up. And then after bishop takes f4 and then knight c6, white can make the move of knight c3 in order to get ready. This looks great. Is this powerful or really like very, very dangerous? Well, it depends. I mean, as of this moment, white is just about to prepare and move his pieces across. But we could see that having a bad king is like having a weakness in general. It really ties down most of the important pieces, or at least the value of most pieces, which need to stay near that king and protect it, no matter what. So that's very vulnerable. When the king tries to run, it gets even worse because it becomes an even bigger target that the opposite player will actually try to exploit. Like for instance, a move of knight to d5, which will hit the queen and also the c7 pawn. With that move in line, we could see how difficult it becomes for black to defend it, because it's not just the queen, it is also the pawn there in the c7, and it's everything near the black king that will be targeted and threatened and attacked. It's not just one thing. It's a complex of problems that black is going to have to endure and experience at this moment. Unfortunately, it's too painful because for this reason black could eventually lose material in the end, and that's how the game ends. Losing the material, and that's it. So as you could see, in the opening stage of the game, the king becomes one of the most liable, the most vulnerable pieces that you will have to to worry about. On another hand, the middle game is a different setup. Let's talk a little bit about the middle game. We're going to go over an opening which is very favorite of mine, and I hope you know it too. This is basically the Grand Prix attack. In the Grand Prix attack, we don't have any early ways to exploit the opponent's king or attack against it or anything. But on the other hand, we've got a very nice setup, and that setup is exactly the one thing which determines white's ability to try and drive an attack against the black king. Here's how that goes. After the move of bishop b5, in case of d6, white's ready to exchange on c6 and create double pawns inside black's position. Now at first that doesn't really look like anything dangerous. So white plays short castles, knight f6 and d3. The concept though is that now white is given the possibility to prepare and set up strong firepower to attack against the black king. It's not going to be very easy, but it is efficient. So what is the way to do this? How do we make the attack happen? Well, the first thing is that after black is castled short, what we need is to just bring the queen together. Having it go to e1 is beautiful because we could see that the queen is now ready to advance towards h4. And not just that, but also with h4 we could have f5, and then there is the possibility of playing bishop h6. The concept is to surround the opponent's king and make sure that we bring our forces in line with the attack and everything we want. Step by step, white is starting to make his own forces attack against the opponent. Just one step at a time. Does it take time? Is it like bad or is it good? It depends on the situation. But I think that for the most part here, white wouldn't have to worry or like be concerned in any way about how the game develops, because in the end of the day, the attack is. So after the move of queen to e1, in case of rook b8, white could even come forward with a move like queen h4, and that is the plan. The setup which leads white's pieces towards the king's side is pretty useful. We have the activity, the plan, and most importantly, the resources that seem to set it all up. With that move in line, everything just looks good, or it looks better, so to speak. Well, the moment that queen comes up to the h4, just the position obviously stands much better and more consistent. So it's a matter of time for white to get it going. After queen h4, bishop d7, there is f5, and then we can see that this sort of break that comes inside black's position is very beautiful. It's well set. It seems to be helping out white's position and attacking possibilities a lot. And yes, it is fairly good to have this happen. The most important thing you care about in such a position is just to go forward and just keep up with the attack, keep up with the pressure. Is it easy to do? No. Is it I would say, is it challenging? Well, not really. See, it's different. I would even say that ultimately you can probably follow with rook to b1, and then after rook to the b1, let's say queen c7, we can have f5. The concept being is that now this king is going to get under a serious target and attack, so that's what we care to do. Having f5 in line is a beautiful resource, as it could very much help white with the idea to attack against the opponent, and well, that's exactly how we do it. Step by step, just bringing those pieces right through where they need to be involved. And then after, in fact, after that type of move, pawn to the f5, we have the bishop coming down to h6. We have the majority of black's pieces badly placed. So after rook e8, bishop h6, and knight g5. A king is also very vulnerable in the middle game. It becomes a significant target that we could really advance against, and then you can see why it's so important to have one like that. Just keeping the opponent on the backside, defending and being backward is what's most necessary. Just step up, set your forces together, and make the attack work. It's not easy, but that's the right way to do it. And I would usually say that the king must hide behind pawns and bishops. In rare occasions it goes up, and that usually doesn't end too well in such positions. But yes, we could say that it's one of the things that most people ultimately do. So that is how we can think in terms of what are the major plans and major ideas should be in a certain position, in a certain situation. Now let us talk a bit more about, now when it comes down to the end game, in which they basically have the queens and probably some other pieces exchanged too, the value of the king changes dramatically, and I want to mention that very much because it's very different. What we can see now is that both of the white and the black kings do look rather similar. Now the white king is a little behind, the black king is even more behind at that moment, and we could say that they look rather fine, both of them. The difference, however, is very big. The white king has now the ability to advance and come closer to the center, while the black king does not actually have such an easy possibility, such an easy opportunity. And that is what makes so much difference in here. The difference between the pieces is everything that we care about, and how they look, how they do things, in their own way. The truth is that in this type of position, white can just very quickly move ahead with the move of king to king f3, and then we can understand that the king is ready to go forward. It can very quickly move ahead towards the f3. It can jump into the attack through e4, and it can even go ahead towards the d5, the d4. It's a very effective way to do it. Now the black king would obviously like to do the same, but liking does not matter here, because it is all about whether he can do it or he can't. And the truth is, he can't. If king g8 comes in, we have king e4, king f7, king d4, and then after king to e7, white can just take the c4 with his own king. And that's a beautiful version to do it, because in the end of the day, by taking this pawn, white will be ahead of pawn. He has an easy way to protect the c pawn, and I mean, this is one of the most obvious ways on how a king is going to be very valuable in supporting his own activity as well as attacking the opponent. There are many similar examples, many different ways on how that proves to be just as important, just as valuable. But this is one of the more common ones. The key is that if there is a more active or advanced king in the endgame, the game is almost predestined. So there is no way on how the opponent will be able to secure it. So like, more active king is almost equal to winning. That's why people often said that in the end game, an active king is almost as good as an active rook. people compare its value to the rook's value because that thing really counts. So that's what I'd like to mention about that.